Hey everybody, my name is Alex with Hake Hardware, and in this video we are going to cover how to set up an autonomous node for Windows using the CLI. So quick caveat, quick note here, I am doing this video on Gemini 3H. If you're on mainnet, things might have changed from what you see in the video. However, I am going to link this wiki, and I typically keep this up to date. So if there are changes for mainnet, as long as you don't see this warning there anymore, likely it's been updated. Another note, which will become very clear as we go through this guide, I am not a Windows power user. I wanted to make some guides. I don't actually use Windows for any of my autonomous stuff, but I wanted to make some Windows guides because I know there's a lot of people out there with Windows, and I want to make sure that they're able to get their node set up and farming. So another quick point for people new to Autonomous, there's a node and there's a farm. You have to run both if you want to earn rewards. We're going to set up the node first, and then you can set up the farm later. The farm basically needs to connect to the node to work correctly. So if you are just getting started, you are in the right spot. And another thing we'll cover real quick, this is a link to the official wiki, and there's some prerequisites or I guess you could say requirements, but you're going to need at least Ubuntu 22.04 for the advanced CLI and Windows 11. This is obviously a Windows guide, so Windows 11 and then Mac OS 14. And you're going to need at least 4 cores, 8 gigs of RAM, and for the node storage, and the node storage can either be on your current operating system drive, or if you have like another SSD, you can store it on that, and you're going to specify that with a command dash dash base path, and you can put whatever wherever you want to store that 100 gigs of node storage, although 256 is recommended. And it should be an SSD. Pretty much everything for Autonomous should be an SSD. Okay, let's jump back here. Oh, another quick thing, internet usage. You should have a pretty quick internet speed. I don't think there's a specific speed you need, but I would say at least like 100 megabits up and down. That's 10 megabytes, and you should have unlimited data because it does use a lot of data. Okay, let's start with organization, and I'm going to try and do as much of this in PowerShell as possible because I think it's just easier to follow than me like going into File Explorer and creating folders and stuff and executing like weird commands and downloading files into my downloads. So there's going to be some stuff here, like I download the executable with this invoke web request. You can just literally go to the releases page and download it. So just keep in mind, I'm doing this because this way you can almost copy paste these things rather than having to follow me exactly. So let's go back to organization. Let's go into PowerShell and I'm in my home directory here and I'm going to do mkdir autonomous, and that creates an autonomous folder, and I'm going to go into that folder, and then I'm going to do mkdir, so make directory, and I'm going to create a node folder. So in my autonomous folder, I will typically create a node folder, and then when I set up my farmer, I will create a farmer folder. So for now, we just have the node folder, so we're going to cd into the node folder, and that's what we're setting up now. And anytime you want to clear your screen, you can do cls. And I'm just going to be following the wiki, and you'll be able to uh, go to the wiki. I'll link it in the description. So I'm just copying the invoke web request here to download. And here we go. So we're downloading it now. It's going to take a couple of minutes. We're going to switch back into the wiki just so we can go over a few more things while that's downloading. Again, you can just go to the releases page, and you're going to want to click show all assets, and you're going to see down here at the bottom where we want the node. So there's farmer and there's node. Then there's a bunch of different operating systems. We want Windows. Then there's Arch 64, x86 Skylake, and x86 v2. And then it's the version that we're on. So Gemini 3H, October 10th. Now, as specified up here, Skylake is for Intel Skylake or AMD Ryzen processors and newer. And for the V2, it's going to be older processors, like 2009 to 2015 or so. And then processors older than that, you're going to have to build or compile your own executable. And then we have x86, which is typically like Intel and AMD processors, and you have A Arch. So that's typically either going to be for Mac OS or it's going to be like a single board computer or like an ARM processor type deal. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're getting the correct one. For me, it's going to be this Windows x86 Skylake Gemini 3H, and that's going to be what it is for most people. So you can just click it and download it from here, but we use the command line because that's what this is all about. Okay, so once we've downloaded this, we can actually just literally run the node. But there's a few caveats here, and although I don't have it in here, one caveat is that you need to forward your ports. So I'm not going to go into it too deep. You can typically Google your router model number and then the word port forward. And there's usually tons of resources on how to forward your ports. You need to do that for the node because it needs to make a certain amount of connections, and you should eventually reach 40 peers, and that'll make more sense once you see us execute these files, and you'll see the logs. But I'm not going to go over port forwarding too much here because it's really dependent on which router that you have. All right, so let's just copy, or actually let's go through this. So we have the executable that we just downloaded, the command run, chain, it's going to be Gemini 3H, but if we're in mainnet, that might be different. Base path, again, this is going to be where you store the node data, and that's going to need to have at least 100 gigabytes of space available. Then we have the farmer, which is just a command saying that you're running a farmer version of the node. So it's a little confusing, but there's also something called an operator node, which is a little bit different. And we want to make sure that we have farmer in here, and then dash dash name, that's for telemetry. So as an example here, this is what I'm actually going to copy. And we have base path, and we're going to use this PowerShell variable, I guess. It's going to say the current location basically. So in the folder that I'm running this, so autonomous/node, I'm going to store my node data. Then we have farmer, and I'm going to put hey hardware-tutorial for my name. So let's jump back over to Termius and paste that in there. And it's hard to see, I know. We're just going to hit enter, and you can see our node has started. And this is typically good. We have some like little question marks here. This is because I'm using Termius, I think. For you, if you're actually in PowerShell, and if you're not sure how to get into PowerShell, you can press the Windows key plus X. So Windows key and X at the same time. Look for terminal and then in brackets like admin. You probably don't need admin, but a lot of times I'll just use the admin one because it's easier. Note this here, this error. Oh, this error. This is very common. So, or I guess it's a warn, but it does say error. It's a little confusing. This is normal. You can just ignore this error while dialing telemetry. But what you're going to basically get when you start your node is these log outputs. So we have syncing, so it's currently syncing. 0 blocks per second, I guess. That's like how many blocks you're syncing per second. Target, this is our target block height that we're looking for. Best is where we're currently at. And finalize is not really relevant. And then you can see we just have some up and down speed right here. So this is going to eventually, this should reach 40 peers if I have my ports forward correctly. And there's something called snap sync. So it looks like we've got a long way to go. That's like what, 3 million, 3.7 million blocks. But we're going to eventually get like up to 3.6 million in like 2 seconds, but you have to wait a little while for it to kind of kick in. It's called snap sync. So overall, if you're not fully synced within, I'd say about an hour, there might be something wrong. Like maybe you need to forward your ports correctly. I'll link to a site in the wiki that you can go to test and see if your ports are forwarded. So let's control C this one. And so if you notice, like every time you come in here, if you have to run this command, you have to paste this in and hit enter, and it's kind of sloppy. If you want to make changes, like let's say you need to use alternate ports because there's a conflict, And there's some other options that you can actually run as far as the node goes. It gets a little messy. So one cool thing you can do is create a PowerShell script. So let's go back, and as you can see, there's that Warren consensus. This is an explanation. And then here's what the snap sync will look like. So you see syncing like 711,000 blocks per second. And we jump up really quickly as far as our best. So we went to 3.5 million back then. The black height was 3.5 million. So we were pretty close. So let's set up a deployment script. Let's just say you want to be able to double click a file or execute a file that has all of the specific parameters that you want. First, you're going to want to set the execution policy to remote signed. I need to actually test this out. I don't know if it works. You know what? I needed to do it from an admin, uh, PowerShell, but you should be able to set your execution policy to remote signed in an admin terminal PowerShell. So um, you can do again by clicking Windows key and then X, and then you'll be able to uh, open up the terminal that says admin. Okay, but I should actually still be able to complete this. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to break away from the command line here, and I'm going to type in notepad. And this is actually going to bring up a notepad. Just going to close out of a few things and then share my notepad, window capture device, notepad. Think this will work. All right. So back to I'm going to move this down a little bit here. Back to Firefox. We're going to want to scroll down to the using a script, and we're going to want to copy this section in here. And then we're going to want to go back into our notepad and paste it. And this is basically going to be the same thing, except for it's just getting executed as a PowerShell script. So file, save as, and you can't see what I'm doing. There will be screenshots in the wiki. I don't have them now. But basically for the file name, I'm just going to call it autonomous-node.ps1. And then for the save as type, I'm going to do all files. And it's basically going to save it as a PowerShell script. So I'm going to click save, and I'm going to close out of this, and we're going to go into Termius. And if I do dir, you can see we have this autonomous node ps1 file. And if I do that, it actually executes the script. So now I don't have to put in all that extra information. It's already in that text file. And if I want to update that text file, I can just update the text file and save it, and then I can run it directly from the command line like that. And even you can double click it from the folder and it'll open up a PowerShell script. So, or PowerShell terminal. Okay, we basically are good to go at this point. It's running, as you can see, on port 9944. So when you run your farmer, you're going to be pointing to this node running on 9944. And let's just jump back into the wiki one more time. This is, again, like when you're in your PowerShell script, if you have to specify alternate ports, you can do that inside your PowerShell script, and then that way you don't have to copy and paste every single time you want to execute the script. So there's probably other ways to do this. Personally, I would probably do a little bit more research to see what other options there are, but this is what I've been using as a quick way to get started. So at least you'll be able to get your node syncing, and if you want to look at some potentially like better scripts to do something like this, you might have better luck doing that. But at this point, it's just a waiting game, so I'll just let this continue to go. note that you can't close your terminal because then they will close the node. So you'll have to keep this node running for as long as you want your node to be syncing with the blockchain. So you should keep this up pretty much 24/7. And that's it. So hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to give the video a like, and I'll see you in the next one.